begin, maybe we'll just take a 2 minute from each of you to even explain. I think Shraddha has given a broad construct of what the organization does, but if you want to just, you know, in a couple of minutes, explain a little bit of the model you follow, whether it is, the sectors that you focus on. I think following Chaya's discussion, I know L&T does a lot of work around women empowerment. So, whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's economic empowerment, and also the model you follow, the not-for-profit or the government or a platform. And then we can get into more details. Maybe we could start with you.
Thank you, Geeta, and good evening, all. Shraddha did introduce me. I am Apurva Rathod. I'll just say that, yes, I look after governance in my capacity as the group's head secretarial, as well as look after the CSR and sustainability piece at L&T Finance. L&T Finance is one of the leading NBFCs, and we give loans across various products, be it microloans, be it tractor finance, be it SME. We also have a housing loan portfolio. We also have two-wheelers. When I talk about L&T Finance, I would say both its business as well as when I look at it, the CSR initiative. Both of them put together actually contribute to the inclusive development, and when we could talk about creating a self-reliant India. And why do I say that? So when I look at the businesses that we have, one of them is microloans. And the whole purpose of the microloans business is to contribute or is to give loans to the women in rural areas. And that's how we bring in that segment of women in a financial inclusion space and give them that confidence or give them that support that will make them self-reliant. When I look at the other piece that L&T Finance does, which is in CSR space, where its vision is digital and financial inclusion of rural communities and creating sustainable livelihood. With that model in mind, we have identified our CSR project, which is based on the concept of that we follow internally, which is 3S, which is any activity or any project which has a social impact, which is scalable and sustainable. Basis this, we've created a model called Digital Sakhis, and we implement that program with the help of obviously the NGO partners that represent us on the ground, because we believe that they have that skill, they have that capability to handle the on-ground challenges better than us, and that's the model that we follow at L&T Finance.
And I did want to highlight, I think, going back to, the theme of SABERA of silently working behind the scenes, I do think these digital Sakhis who come from the community are a big change agent. And the fact that they come from the community, the kind of impact that they can have is actually immense. It seems easy that from the outside you can go in and make the change, but actually sustainable change needs to happen from within the community. And just on financial inclusion, I would say as a foundation, the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation works across 3 areas, education, livelihoods, financial inclusion. And I know our teams have a constant fight of which is more impactful, because when you are able to give good education to a child, you're really transforming their life and the family's life forever, for generations. When you give them livelihoods, it's instant gratification. There is a income stream coming. And then in the case of financial inclusion, given that I have also worked in the area of microfinance, I feel the kind of empowerment that gets in the hands of the women when they get the loans, they're able to invest in businesses. I think the whole point that Chaya was making about mainstreaming, the decision-making power shifting to them. So it's not just about business incomes increasing. I actually think it is a very big change agent, for the household, for the community, happening grassroots and top up. So these are, I guess, more individualized initiatives, but at the same time, you can keep working silently. How do you amplify that voice? How do you get many others to be able to do what you're doing, not to repeat the same mistakes? I think in that construct, the power of platforms, the power of technology, the power of policy is extremely important. And maybe I can invite.
Geeta, can I just play one video on digital Sakhi? We just wanted to showcase, what exactly we mean. It's a very small snapshot, under a minute video that we thought that we could show it to the audience. Thanks, Richard.
हर सुबह जब तू जागती है तो जानती है तू बढ़ रही है। उठते साथ एक लंबी सांस में अपने दिन का पूरा हिसाब बना लेती है। तू जानती है तू बढ़ रही है। कितने अनेक रूप हैं तेरे। कहीं कोई मीलों दूर का सफर तय कर कई और औरतों को वित्तीय साक्षरता का पाठ पढ़ा रही है, तो कोई टैब के माध्यम से अपनी सहेली और उसके परिवार का जीवन आसान बना रही है। कहीं कोई पूरे गांव की औरतों को समझा बुझा के प्रशिक्षण के लाभ बता रही है, तो कहीं कोई अपने जैसा राही चुन उसे आगे बढ़ने को प्रोत्साहित कर रही है। कहीं कोई खर्चे में सूझबूझ से सबके पैसे बचा रही है, तो कहीं कोई बड़े बूढ़ों को एटीएम कार्ड के फायदे समझा रही है। तू जानती है तेरे हर रूप में तू बढ़ रही है, तो हिम्मत है ना तेरी, इसे ऐसे ही रखना। ये जो कभी ना रुकने वाला जज्बा है ना, ध्यान रहे ये बरकरार रहे। इसीलिए तेरा हर कदम आगे है, एक नई जीत की तरफ, एक पूरे सपने की तरफ, एक नए समाज की तरफ। तेरा हर कदम बस आगे है।
So before I hand over to you, just 2 points. So like from an L&T Finance perspective, we work on a two-pronged strategy. Not only the business supports, but also from a CSR perspective, we ensure that, women are included in all our programs. And I know many people say कि if अगर परिवार की औरत पढ़ेगी तो पूरा परिवार पढ़ता है. It's a very known thing, and when I first heard it and when I go on to fields and see it is actually the truth, that if you make the woman of the house confident, you bring out the leadership skills in her, you train her, she imparts that to the children, and that cycle keeps on going. And I think that's what our project aims to achieve.
And I think the project is very, very critical in light of the fact that I think India is 135th out of 146 countries in women participation in the labor force. We are behind Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. I'm not passing value judgment, but I just think the amount of growth that can happen if we are able to, tap this workforce as well. So yeah, we cannot achieve any of our 5 trillion goals without tapping into this workforce. But from that note to technology and science, maybe Vikrant, I can invite you to share a bit about it.
Thank you so much, Geeta ji. Even though I represent what is the premier body for science and technology in India, we have not yet invented the teleportation device, so I'm really sorry for being late and delaying the proceedings earlier. Of course, Chaya ma'am talked about a lot of inspirational ladies who have been, and we were caught up with one such lady who actually guides our mission at the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor. The Scientific Secretary herself and the Additional Secretary, both are our guiding lights. So we are really privileged to have that kind of leadership in the Office of PSA. Coming to Agnii, Agnii is one of the 9 missions under what is called the Prime Minister's Science, Technology, Innovation Advisory Council. The council itself drives the direction that the science and technology ecosystem of the country, the direction it takes. At Agnii, what we essentially do is showcase that a lot of India's challenges could be solved with India's very own science and technology and innovation ecosystem. So Atma Nirbhar Bharat is at the core of it. But it's also 3-4 other principles how the mission actually goes forward with this. One is, of course, we spend a lot of time, any problem statement that we take up, we spend a lot of time on researching it. A key part of it is ethnographic research to be able to find out what might be the tenets of diversity, equity, and inclusivity towards the end adopters, the beneficiaries of whatever projects we are running. So that is the core first principle that we follow, extensive evidence-based research and the tenets of inclusivity, equity, and diversity. Second most important principle we base our work on is rooting ourselves in the ground realities. So oftentimes it is thought that government officials make decisions based out of sitting out of Delhi or their respective offices, but we take pride, and it was the intent of the mission itself was to uncover those ground realities. And as you'll see, as the panel progresses, we'll talk about more examples of how we do that. Third is around actually showcasing the power of technology. Oftentimes, it is hard to imagine, and it's a very well known fact that oftentimes people who actually need technology don't understand technology or don't know that they actually need it. So the idea here, the principle that guides us is we have to show how the technology works and how it can show the impact. Of course, we can, as the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor, we don't get into implementation, but our role is to create those models, showcase those models, how various elements would come together to be able to drive any kind of technology adoption and intervention. So those are the 3-4 principles that we base ourselves on, and the key one being, which we'll talk about more in detail, is the scalability aspect. Any issue or challenge that we take up as part of the Agnii Mission has to have the scale, and the scale comes with certain examples. For example, our work, which Itifji and Sanish will also talk about, our work in Kashmir, although it dealt with the craftsmen and craftswomen and artisans of Kashmir and their respective arts, but the model that came out of it is scalable to any and every craft cluster of the country. So that is again the core principle that I would like to highlight. And you can read more about our work. Some of you might have received the quick brochure. It talks about certain projects that we have undertaken in the livelihood space, human development, some of the climate change projects that we are doing, and of course on the healthcare side, a big project that we did earlier. So yeah, that's a quick introduction. We'll of course get to more details as we go along.
I think there's an AV also on. Oh, you clicked it. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So I was just thinking, should we actually get to Itifji first and then?
Thank you very much. Primarily, I would like to thank SABERA and the Agnii team for inviting me to this place, and I get an opportunity to speak to all of you today. I represent Jammu and Kashmir Handicraft and Handloom Department today here, and if I give you the context of what Handicraft and Handloom Department in J&K does, primarily there are 3 major sectors of J&K's economy which have been holding the economy for a longer period of time. It is tourism, horticulture, and handicrafts and handlooms. Though tourism and horticulture have received quite a lot of support over a longer period of time, and there has been a lot of interventions which have happened, but within the sector of handicraft and handloom, there was not any major initiatives or the technological advancements that happened over the last so many years. But in particularly 2021, it was the first time that J&K came up with its own handicraft and handloom policy, which focused on the artisans itself. I also take the opportunity to tell you that J&K has more than 3.5 lakh artisans as on date who are working across different crafts that are produced. And I'm sure most of you at any point of time in life would have brought a product which comes from the J&K's handicraft and handloom sector. One of the major issues that we have seen in the last so many decades is that there was a lot of counterfeiting happening within the products that were being produced. So one of the major government initiatives that came up was that we GI tagged around 13 of the crafts that we produce. And then we also came up with the QR-based labels which work on the blockchain model so that you are aware of who the artisans is, how the product was produced, and when it was produced, and you at any point of time have the authenticity of the product that is being brought in. At the same time, when you talk about the number of artisans we have, we also are aware that a large number of new generation people who are now coming from these families do not want to take up handicraft and handloom because the wages are so minimal, and that is one of the factors that J&K Handicraft and Handloom Department is again trying to work in. But particularly if I talk about the couple of initiatives, if I have time, we have been working with the Agnii team. We got in connection a year ago, probably a year and a half ago, and then we started to work in couple of these technologies. That when I talk about the technologies, please don't understand that we are talking about a lot of artificial intelligence or machine learning. There are simple technological interventions which can improve the life of the artisans within J&K, and that is the technology that we are talking about. If I tell you that in 1980s, Namda was exported more than the carpets were exported from Kashmir, it might come up as a surprise. But then the Namda industry was dying for a longer period of time, and there were no takers for these Namdas. But now, with the help of the Agnii team, we have been able to bring in one small intervention, which is a roller. While the artisan would take some 6 to 8 hours rolling these namdas in very inhuman conditions, now we are able to procure these rollers which help them do the same job in half an hour, and the technology is not so uh, it's not deep tech in that way, and it's kind of helping the people to increase both the production and the wages that they acquire over a period of time. I think that
Thank
is
you,
for
Jesse. I
the
think that's a great, and the yes, the AV is also running on the Namda rollers. But I think that's a great example of technology enabling, human growth, human nurturing. There are a lot of current dialogue on how technology will overtake, and the future of jobs will go away. There will be more joblessness, but done right, it can actually do immense good in terms of, I think, improving the quality of life for humans. That was a great example, and I would say even if it was deep tech, as long as it is impacting and creating a positive impact, it's all positive. But maybe Tanish, you want to talk of a few other examples from the Agnii portfolio?
So, hi, I'm Sanish Kulkarni, and the fact that a person like me who has graduated from TIS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, is a part of a technology mission of Government of India says a lot about what the intent of the government, especially the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor, is. So what Agnii does is it provides adopter-oriented technology advisory. So as rightly Ritif ji pointed out that it's not about deep tech but deep impact tech that that Agnii works with, and the before this panel started, there was a very power pack guidance by Chaya ma'am, and I think these anecdotes we have also encountered in our field. So, for example, when we work in Uttarakhand, we see a trend of migration of men from Uttarakhand to other states. So, right now in Uttarakhand, if you go to any district, you'll majorly find women leading the households and leading the economy of Uttarakhand over there. So when Agnii works in Uttarakhand, Agnii tries to align the technology needs of the women over there, because adopter over in Uttarakhand or in Kashmir also for that matter are women. So when we are proposing technology, we have to take our adopter in mind. So for example, in Uttarakhand, when we suggest technologies for let's say soil testing technologies, we also look at technologies, soil testing technologies which are portable, because in Uttarakhand, women possibly cannot really travel day in, day out through hills because of the transportation limitations over there. So if they have the soil testing kits with them, they can easily do that. And in the brochure, if you see on the third page, there is an example of soil testing kit. Our brochure is also tech enabled. So with an app, you can actually see that image come to life. So these women can actually test their own soil at their end, and that is where this is our deep impact tech. But deep tech comes into picture when the data of this soil testing is useful for us to then possibly recommend right kind of uh, right kind of crops they could grow. So that is what Agnii does. So again, coming back to what Agnii does in deep tech or deep impact advisory, what we do is essentially we go to the field, we map out the pain points, we look at the operational scenario in particular region, So the kind of trends that are there in the region help us identify the end adopters. Yes, the payer could be government, but the adopters are citizens, are farmers, are artisans. So we understand their pain points. Based on these pain points, we develop technology operational scenarios, how tech could really make a difference, whether tech could really make a difference, or is there any traditional knowledge which is there with these communities, and whether we could use these traditional, I could say, knowledge banks to promote more. So in Kashmir, for example, we are working on digitizing talims. Talims are encoded pieces of, I would say, guidelines for weaving of Pashmina shawls. So the guidelines are already there. We are just digitizing them. So this is what Agnii does. Thank you.
No, the QR code to prove the authenticity of the products that are being sold.
Excellent. No, I think, yeah, and the videos are actually giving more real life example, because it's good to see that. I was just thinking maybe we'll do one more round of quick questions amongst the panelists. I was earlier thinking we'll break it into two questions, but maybe I'll give you the option of which question you want to pick up. So I think in the audience here, and even otherwise, in the sector of making change happen, we often discuss, is the depth of change, to be looked at more seriously, or the breadth of change? Do you just move, the entire society a notch higher, or do you really create deep impact for a few set of individuals who will again become role models and then have a trickle down impact? But given the current sort of scale of, the challenge in India, I was just thinking maybe you want to share some of your thoughts on how you try and balance out the depth of impact and the scale of impact. And is there, any guidance to the audience that you might want to give? So maybe we could start with you, Itibji, because I know you wear two hats. I mean, of course, not that the Handicraft Council hat is a small one. You mentioned 3.5 lakh artisans, but you also wear another hat in where you are really trying to promote market-based solutions, which have scalability inherently built in them.
Yes.
So
I think, thank you very much for bringing it up. I also, as was told in the introduction, was leading the JNK startup policy for around 6 years. And startup is definitely a new culture that was being brought in. The organization I worked with for a decade before I was in handicraft helped create around 15,000 enterprises over a period of time. But one of the problems that I always saw in these enterprises was that they were geographically bound within the state of J&K, now the Union Territory, of course. They would never be able to come out and compete at a level which we wanted to come at the national level or the global level. So that was one of the major issues that we saw within the startup, within the enterprise or the business community. But the startups kind of gave the platform wherein through we could bring a lot of people to a platform where they would engage at the national and the global level. And the the factor being realized by the government, also a lot of incubation centers were being set up across the higher education department, colleges and universities. But particularly, I believe it's important that since Geetaji also said that there are a lot of corporates here, a lot of NGOs who are working in the field, I'm sure a lot of people who would come to that part of the world and mainly talk about the technological interventions that have already happened, talk about the scalability of the projects that has happened. I'm sure there are a couple of startups which have actually come off the ground and working at the national level today, but there is a scope for such a huge number of startups to come and grow. As they say, where there are more problems, there are opportunities as well. So there is this huge scope wherein these startups could be given those platforms through which they could create the products which are then available to the length and the breadth of the society, and also in its own way create an incentive for the people of J&K and make it more aspirational and inspirational for all of them to be part of that bigger community itself.
excellent. Thank you. And maybe I can share a little bit about how we've dealt with this discussion. I don't think it's an either or question. You have to do both in some ways. But really, if there is demonstrable impact, I mean, that is the first filter, and only then you scale it up. I mean, I'll give you two contrasts, and one of our partners is sitting here, Sudha from Foundation for Excellence. They do scholarship programs for undergraduate students in tier 1, tier 2 engineering and medical colleges. I think today they reach about 13,000 students. I mean, extremely, I would say, passionate, young, students coming from very difficult backgrounds. In fact, I met one of them who's a third year student in IIT Delhi, and I will always talk about women examples and not male examples. I also met the other boy with her, but I mean, she came from a farmer family in UP. I think she'd gone to Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya, and then for 2 years at Dakshina Foundation in Karnataka. The 2 years that she was in Karnataka studying for her IIT JEE, she did not go home because there was no money for the train tickets. And I mean, of course, she cleared her IIT JEE. She was an IIT Delhi student in her third year, and had already created 2 startups of her own. Was looking to hire people. I mean, just the level of transformational change in her, and I think the ripple effect on the family is just way stronger than I mean, that's one comparison point for us. And the other comparison point is, we're working in the state of Haryana. There are 2.2 million students in the government schools in Haryana. And yes, in 5 years, the education levels doubled for the students. So 80% were at grade level competency. That's I mean, it's a large number. 2.2 million is difficult to beat. But again, I feel the changes there are incremental. You've moved the system, you've moved the bar, you've raised the bar. But the intergenerational change that you can actually have through the deep impact projects is, I mean, it's very difficult to compare. But I think those discussions and dialogues are very important to have, just to be, clear on what you want to do and what you want to support. Maybe, Sanish, I can come to you in terms of how you look at these things at Agnii.
So I think scale versus impact or scale versus depth is a conundrum which has bothered me in my previous stint as a social entrepreneur, where I had founded an NGO and we were training juvenile delinquents over there. So their depth was the only option for us, and scale did not matter over there. But at Agnii, it's the other way around. The scale has to be there, but we cannot sacrifice the depth. So, for example, whenever we are recommending technology, especially in the climate change space or in handlooms and handicraft space, our adopters are, again, like I said, artisans, farmers. So, whenever we are recommending a tech, the tech won't be adopted unless and until there is behavioral change or attitudinal shift. So, that in itself is a long drawn process over there, so that we can minimize the length of the process by recommending technologies which are relevant to them and which they could adopt easily. But there are some technologies which are very advanced and they have to adopt to it. So depth is what we look at, and scale is something which is built in our process only. So whenever we are recommending technologies, let's say to Uttarakhand government, it's not for the Uttarakhand government, it's for the entire Indian Himalayan region. If we are recommending technology to the government of Jammu and Kashmir for handlooms and handicrafts, is for the entire handicrafts and handlooms ecosystem in India. Obviously, there would be some amount of customization which would be required from state to state, from let's say handlooms and handicraft cluster to cluster, to bring depth to their own clusters or their own states. But our technology advisory as a whole focuses on scale while delivering the impact and depth.
Thank you. Yeah, and I guess, again, at an individual organization level, you may be focusing on depth, but it is through, platforms like Agnii or, policy changes that you could actually also push on the scalability factor. So I think these are important choices that every organization, every CSR also makes. Maybe Vikrant, I'll come to you in the end, and Apurva, you want to comment on this?
Sure. So like I said at the beginning, that one of the important aspects that we looked at when we designed our CSR project was scalability. And like you rightly said, achieving the length and the breadth across is not possible only by a company on its own, an organization. And it obviously involves collaboration with the NGOs as well as the policymakers. That's the first point. Just to go back on the digital Sakhis that we launched, which was our response when the demonetization was announced. And at that point in time, we realized that we need to bring something that will help digital payment come in vogue. And that's our response to demonetization of creation of digital Sakhi. And we also thought that when we talk about digital, we also need to be sure that we're also making it inclusive. And that's how women were chosen to be the change agents, like you said earlier. Today, as I talk, we have about 1,750 digital Sakhis, about 14,000 women entrepreneurs, and we've touched lives of about 37 plus lakh community members. You'll wonder how the last two legs of women entrepreneurs and community members came in. So to explain to you the structure of the way we operate digital Sakhi, so we identify about 100 Sakhis in a particular location that we operate in. We train them on digital and financial inclusion. The most important thing that we work upon is creating confidence in them, providing them the leadership training that's required at that level. And today when I saw Shraddha, I realized that what she's been imparted training is on confidence, and that's what is making her stand there, and not only the technical skills. And that's what we targeted at. From the digital Sakhis, there were two concepts, I would say, that the two streams. The first one is a woman entrepreneur, wherein we provided them enterprise development training, wherein they were trained on the occupation that they would want to practice, be it tailoring, be it animal husbandry, be it a shop that they have, right from a basics of how to calculate profits. I mean, they didn't even know. They just used to say, okay, I've gotten so much money in my kitty and that's my profit. And we had to actually teach them how to calculate profit. So that's the kind of intervention that we got into. From there, moving on to community, wherein we encouraged, we follow a model of household visits actually, wherein every digital Sakhi goes house to house and teaches them about adoption of digital payments. So when you talk about length to breadth, I see my 1,750 digital Sakhis reaching out to about 14,000 women entrepreneurs and reaching out to 37 plus lakh community members. So it's a small start, but yes, with collaboration, like I said, with policymakers as well as the NGOs, we can take it a step ahead. And that's what I was speaking to Irtif some time back, that while we train women entrepreneurs and while you support startups, maybe we could look at a collaboration where we can move our women entrepreneurs probably on their platform if possible.
Yeah, definitely a collaboration in the making here. And Vikrant, before I hand over to you, maybe again just two data points. Not to say that I'm biased towards scale, but just to highlight the both the problem and the opportunity that we have in India. So I don't know how many of you, but every year ASAR does a survey on basic reading and literacy levels. I mean, yes, today 99% of our children in India are enrolled in schools. But if you take a grade 5 student, less than 25% of them can even do bare two-digit addition, which is actually a grade 2 requirement. I mean, India hasn't taken PISA for 14 years now, because in 2009, when we took it, we were the second to last across the world. So I mean, there's definitely a big challenge facing us in terms of educating this generation, which will really be the future for us. But again, on the opportunity side, I think we've also made such dramatic progress on technology with our digital public goods. I think today UPI transactions are so prevalent, whether it is the local sabji wala, the kirana store, everybody is using it, not just in urban areas but also rural areas. So problems that were considered intractable, populations that were considered difficult to reach, difficult to access, today I would say there is an opportunity and there's a pathway for reaching them. And technology is that big bridge which is allowing us to do that. And again, Agnii being at the center of it, of blending technology and impact, maybe you want to share more around just your views on depth and scale.
So I think the very genesis of the Agnii Mission was to maintain that balance. There are two essential pillars how we strike that balance or try to strike that balance. One, of course, lies in Agnii being a program, but through our program execution, we get a lot of insight into what might be the policy intervention that could be driven. So, and we are at an advantageous position, fortunately, to be able to drive both program for depth and policy for scale. So that is one way we are trying to do that. In fact, recently, before we talked a lot about the livelihoods and human development angle to our work. Before this, we were also looking at a lot of national security projects, which are more sophisticated in terms of the kind of technologies that go in there. So through that work, for example, we were able to see that the deep tech ecosystem, the deep tech startup ecosystem, is something that has been facing a lot of challenges. So as we worked in the program mode for the national security problem statements, for example, we uncovered the challenges of the ecosystem, which we have now put out a draft with the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor towards a national deep tech startup policy. Why a national deep tech startup policy? Because the deep tech ecosystem from a general startup ecosystem requires very nuanced interventions. So those are the kind of, that is one way that we are trying to balance this, strike that balance. And second is, I would say, again, we are privileged to be in a position where we are able to convene a lot of stakeholders from the ecosystem. Stakeholders like yourself, people who can, entities who can actually take forward the models that we have recommended as part of our advisory, put that into action and provide the scale that is needed. In fact, that is one example where we do it. On the other side, we have the good fortune of having as Office of PSA, we preside over the entire R&D ecosystem, right? So which gives us a depth of the kind of interventions we could suggest development of technologies suited to a particular very nuanced use case and provide the depth. And on the other hand, and this is the other advantage or blessing we have in terms of being situated in West India, which provides us the network of industry, of a lot of other governmental organizations to be able to again see how the depth could be converted into scale. So those are the two ways and two pillars that we essentially use to strike that balance.
And maybe just one last question, since there are not-for-profits and CSRs in this room, so if they are dealing with problems, if they're dealing with, so I was just saying, given that there are not-for-profits and CSR in the room, if they are dealing with problems that they feel, Agnii could help out or the platform can be helpful, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Of course, the pamphlet has an email ID at the back, whoever can see that. But it'll be a great honor to hear from you on what are the kind of problem statements. And we are always looking at synergies, right? Where all different ecosystem players can fit in and either address or scale the solution to a particular problem. So yeah, that's the best way. Email, we'll of course be happy to share our phone numbers. We have some of our team members also here, happy to have a chat out after the session as well. But yeah, it's most welcome from all quarters of the society to be able to share their learnings, their problem statements with us.
Perfect. Thank you. I think, I mean, those were my set of questions, and I think we've seeded some thoughts for the group here also. And maybe it's now time we can open the floor for any questions. Suparna has one.
Thank you so much, Geeta. I just wanted to, set the context, uh, especially with Agnii Mission as well. I was so impressed when I walked inside, the Vigyan Bhavan, and when I was introduced to Sanid. Sanid is here? Yeah, when I was introduced to Sanid for the first time, and then he was instrumental in, connecting me with Vikrant and the work that Sanish is doing. Because normally we have in our minds that sarkari hai, government hai. That is the kind of thing that we have, that it is not going to, it's going to get into the red tapeism, it is going to, but it is so exciting to be there, as part of the Invest India, the whole building and everything, that when Vikrant is saying there's an email address, is not out of skepticism, but they are more prompt in responding, and they are, open to ideas and suggestions. The other thing is that I think especially now, when we saw Chandrayaan happen, we saw India land onto the moon, we also realized that there are the tier 2, tier 3, various social sectors from where these engineers and scientists and people are coming from, because the IITians have gone to the Silicon Valley while they are raking in the moolah. It's these guys who've been continuously doing it, and meeting Sanish was one of that. He is somebody, he's not only part of Agnii Mission, but he was also a founder of a non-profit which works with delinquents. I mean, that is something as niche as it can get, and I don't think there are many people who work, because again, delinquents are somebody, you don't want to work with. They've already been branded, right, Chaya? And my question to him was, how? So I want you to share that with everybody here.
I think like Suparnaa ji has spoke very kindly of me. It's not that great of a thing to really initiate something like that. I believe every one of us can do. And luckily the theme today started with women empowerment and empowered women. So my story also kind of starts over there. The woman behind my success or me starting anything like Ayanch Foundation, which used to train juvenile delinquents, was my elder sister. So my education right since my 5th grade to well as until my master's from TIS was entirely funded by my elder sister. She was the one who made the sacrifice of discontinuing her CA and her postmaster's education for me to study. So that was always there, and since she was there, I did not cross the fine line of being mischievous to being delinquent, I would say. But a lot of other peers which lived with me at that point of time were not that fortunate enough to get that sort of guidance, that sort of grounding from their homes, and they landed up in juvenile justice system. And I saw their trajectory when I was doing my bachelor's. I did my bachelor's in mass media advertising. That's when I realized that and in my bachelor's also I'd started one startup which revolved around merchandising. So that is when I realized that, okay, a guidance from someone made me start my own enterprise just at the bachelor's. Guidance from someone made me even apply to TIS, but they who did not get guidance landed up in juvenile justice system. Eventually, they transitioned to jails, I would say, because it's very funny, and ma'am would agree to that. That we say that juvenile delinquents rehabilitation is successful a lot because we don't have numbers tracking how many juvenile delinquents actually turn up in jails. So after 18, because it's also right that we don't keep the data of juveniles, that is what the law says, but then that is a flaw in the system, wherein we are not able to say that how many juvenile delinquents actually landed up in the jails and how many of them became hardcore criminals. So that is what something I had in mind, but coming from non-privileged family, But yes, educated family. I always saw social work or social entrepreneurship as philanthropy, not as a career. It was only during my bachelor's that I realized, oh, there is a career in it. So that is when I decided to start Ayansh. I started Ayansh, and coming to what largely the current audience is of, from the non-profit sector. So I was running my own NGO. I was implementing policies of the government, and that is where I would like to thank Sanid over here, because Sanid actually introduced us to you, but Sanid also introduced me to Agnii. So he was the person who actually identified that, okay, this person running an NGO could actually fit into a technology advisory program and could really make a difference. So I would like to thank him as well. That is my story, I would say.
Any questions from the audience? Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm Hemal Kamath. I'm from Indore, Madhya Pradesh. First of all, thank you so much, SABERA, for organizing such a wonderful power panel. मैं थोड़ा हिंदी में बोलूँगी कुछ, क्योंकि दिल की बात हिंदी में बोली जाती है. सो आई थिंक आप लोग समझ पाएंगे. सबसे पहला मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा कि मैं भी एक पार्टनर हूँ DCH की इंदौर मध्य प्रदेश में, और CSR के साथ भी मैंने काम किया है. तो यहाँ मुझे लगता है मैं क्वेश्चन की जगह एक अपॉर्चुनिटी है कि हम लोग बहुत साइलोज़ में काम कर रहे हैं, और हमारे पास सबसे बड़ा भी एक एजेंडा है कि हमारी जो आर्टिजन्स है, या जहाँ मैं ट्राइबल या SC कम्युनिटी के साथ काम करती हूँ, उनको हमें एक प्लेटफॉर्म पे लेकर के तो आते हैं, बट मार्केटिंग एक सबसे बड़ा इशू है. तो जैसा आपने मैम कहा कि आप डिजिटल सखी के साथ काम करते हैं, वही चीज़ को अगर हम मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ टेक्सटाइल के साथ में कॉरपोरेट करके और उन्हें डिफरेंट उनके इश्यूज़ के साथ में अगर सामने लेकर के आते, क्योंकि मुझे लगता है DCH ने बहुत सारा काम किया है डिजिटलाइज्ड करने के लिए, बट जहाँ पर प्लेटफॉर्म पे अगर उन्हें, जैसे इंडिया हैंडमेड में उन्हें उनका प्रोडक्ट को अपलोड करना है, बट वो करेंगे कैसे, उसको कैसे डिजिटलाइज करें, ये चीज़ों में वो पीछे रह जाते हैं. वहाँ NGO की रोल आती है. बट यहाँ पर अगर हम कोलैबोरेशन करते हैं तो डेफिनेटली हम गवर्नमेंट को ये प्रेशराइज कर सकते हैं कि जो प्रोडक्ट हमारी SHG हमारी आर्टिजन्स बनाती है, कंपलसरी उनके प्रोग्राम में वो मार्केट से प्रोडक्ट ना खरीदे, वो हमारे आर्टिजन से ही प्रोडक्ट खरीदे. उसके लिए आप लोग आर्टिजन्स के साथ मिलके और CSR के साथ मिल करके काम कर सकते हैं. जैसे मैंने सॉइल एंड वाटर कंजर्वेशन में भी CSR के साथ काम किया है. बट अगेन हमारा काम हमारी कम्युनिटी को पता है, मेरे आदिवासी लोगों को पता है, बट शायद सवेरा ही मुझे यहाँ तक लेकर आया है, जो कि नेशनल प्लेटफॉर्म पे आज अपनी बात को रखने का मौका दे रहा है. बट ये कहीं ना कहीं साइलोज में बहुत सारे लोग काम करें. ये टाइम है कि हम अभी कोलैबोरेट करें. नेटवर्किंग का भी अभी ट्रेंड है, तो मिल कर के काम करेंगे, और उसमें अलग अलग आपका डिजिटल सखी अलग हो रहा है, आप कश्मीर में बहुत अच्छा काम करें, पर शायद दोनों मिलके करेंगे तो मेरे यहाँ पर या मेरे और जो महिलाएं हैं उनको काम करने के लिए बहुत अच्छा प्लेटफॉर्म मिलेगा. थैंक यू.
Maybe we can take one more, because I know we are also in between the award ceremony, right? So last question.
Myself, Mukesh Sinha, I am from Agile Business. Thank you very much for the SABERA to welcome me for this great event. My question is very relevant to Apurva ji and Sanix, correlated, because I also started my journey in the digital training after the Note Bandi in 2016. So I have started digital training through the PM Disha. So we have trained 1 lakh people in Bihar and Jharkhand in the 20 hours digital training. Also nowadays I am doing PM Bani. So we have related with the internet and banking system. Now basic problem we are facing in the eastern part is the fraudism of the internet and banking. No organization is coming with the digital, how to save fraudism through the digital control system. So I request both of you, because you are the Agnii Mission and you are the Apurva ji is the group head of the CSR L&T and digital training platform. So you both come together. So such a innovative technology so that we can protect our people in the poor state or poor people, because everybody is looking for the 5 trillion economy and become the richer. And in this process, they are feel thuggy from the digital platform. So this is my suggestion. You come, both of you, to the good technology. Thank you.
I'll just answer that question. So
Yeah.
in fact, we already have, so we have modules, basis which we teach our Sakhis, train them, and our modules cover cyber frauds. In fact, we keep on improvising the modules depending on what is going to happen. I mean, what is happening what is the current situation? We don't only, tell them about the cyber frauds or the crimes, but we also tell them about their CIBIL scores, because it's very important for them to take loans. So these are various aspects that are already covered in the modules basis which we train the Sakhis, and they in turn the community.
Sorry, I'd like to just add a point. Talked about cyber frauds. So there is a national level website called www.cybercrimes.gov.in. So anybody, I mean, whether it is a digital fraud or it is a cyber stalking or there's anything else which you relating to cyber space, you can log in, put your complaint. You want to stay anonymous, you can mention that, and the nearest police station will reach out to you. So when you write your address and everything and your complaint, and I think a small part of your, there's a box in which you can write your complaint and they will explain, and somebody will call you from the nearest police station. Now this does not mean that if you're sitting in Indore and in a particular police station and you're sitting in Delhi. So even if you're sitting in Delhi and you give an Indore ka address, the local police from Indore will call you. So it's something like that. It's like pan-India, and it is controlled by the government of India at a central level by MHA. So I'll just repeat it. It's www.cybercrime.gov.in.
If I may add just to ma'am's comment here. Ma'am, of course, as the Agnii Mission, we also work on national level scale problems. And in fact, one of the problem statements we'll be taking up shortly is how do we design some AI systems on the exact database that you mentioned, ma'am, the cyber financial frauds, which has come from the MHA. So while there is redressal by police immediately happening, on the side there are attempts to reduce them overall using technology interventions.
And I think I want to add to this, while whatever new that we adopt, there are challenges that come across, but I have seen ambassadors of other countries coming in here and seeing that even the vegetable vendor can accept payment through a UPI app, which nowhere in even the Western world is. So this is something that I think we as Indians need to be really, really proud of, because हमारे लिए तो ये day to day हो गया कि this is how the way it is. But yeah, challenges will keep coming. I guess if there is any specific question for the panelists, then maybe we can take, Geeta, can we take?
I was hoping we could close the panel. I mean, the panelists are here, but maybe one.
Is this a question or a comment? Okay, just one last question.
Okay, I'll try to be loud. So through sustainability, we are trying to address several issues, but one of the things that I don't see commonly being spoken about is climate crisis. And that, in my mind, is one of the biggest risks, I think, existential crisis that we are likely to face. So is there any technology intervention or some solution being looked at to address that?
No, obviously a big chunk of our work, and Sanish alluded to it while he was talking, is the entire focus on climate adaptation. Of course, climate mitigation is more sophisticated and it involves actual reduction in carbon, production overall, the CO2 production. But we are, our focus, as I pointed out, is rooted in what the beneficiaries immediately might need, which is the climate adaptation bit, is our entire work in Uttarakhand. So technologies like, Sanish mentioned about soil chemistry measurement. It may not immediately strike that how does it relate to climate change, but it is a powerful tool for climate adaptation. So for example, in the Champawat district of Uttarakhand where we are working, There have been, due to climate change, there have been adverse impacts in terms of, the kind of crops that have, the crop yields, the crop sustainability that has altered completely. So through this small kind of technology, which is not, very apparent that how it impacts, you just measure the soil chemistry and the weather patterns existing in that localized, hyper localized, district or even small towns. And then based on that, there is advisory that, okay, from maybe apple cultivation, you move on to Malta cultivation, or even like newer markets for kesar cultivation, right? Saffron. Traditionally, Kashmir has been known to, the region of Kashmir has been known to grow it because of the climatic conditions. Fortunately or unfortunately, the adaptation measures also mean that the Uttarakhand climate has become favorable to that kind of a production, right? So those are the kind of, technology. There's no one answer to the climate change problem, but yes.
About consumption patterns. That the whole crisis is because of exponential increase in the energy consumption, which continues to happen. So, anything on that?
So there have been a lot of other missions of the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor working on those, electric mobility. Electric mobility is often thought of as electric vehicles and just batteries coming in, but it's, much, vast than that. In terms of, so we are working, soon we'll be picking up a problem statement in the northeastern region of the country. Some of the states there are so dispersely habitated that, you cannot even think of the power lines reaching or the electricity reaching the last corners. So now that is, although it's a problem, but it's also an opportunity for us to bring in from the very scratch the cleaner ways of, providing these kind of localities and communities with power. So we are looking at micro-hydel kind of, projects, microgrids in those regions, battery storage related, ways of, providing them power, which is like decentralized. But if you think about decentralization from at a place which never had power, it's a good start really from the, even getting power there, instead of thinking of the other way that there's no power. So those are, other means that, other efforts that would help us, move towards lesser and more renewable and cleaner technologies to be able to do that. That's one example. Of course, there are many more.
I'm sure there's several more, and yeah, this discussion can keep going on, but maybe we should close the panel now because they have another power-packed thing for us. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to kind of put this whole thing in perspective that we're hoping now that Vikrant and Sanish and Sanid will be here because they'll be able to see the kind of work that has been happening across the country through the awards that we're celebrating, And the fact that you say that you're so in proximity of, Invest India and Startup India, that you're actually in a position to be that funnel in implementing some kind of technologies that some startups may have, kind of developed with the work that you're seeing here tonight. So that itself is also, and also Apurva, apologies. I think Shraddha missed introducing you, but Apurva is, not just heading sustainability and CSR, but she's also somebody who has come in and brought in, this corporate governance as part of L&T Finance, and I think that even our jury chair, Renu Sood, ma'am, she's one of those very few women now that we know also in the BFSI sector who's spotlessly clean and has brought about that change. And thank you for doing what you're doing as well. Shraddha, over to you.
Thank you all. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, but that we are unaware of. And I'm glad that I belong to a country that is working in the remotest part of uplifting the most marginalized sector through the state-of-the-art technology. Request you to accept a token of appreciation from our side.
Requesting Chaya to please come up and offer a token of appreciation. And we could do with a loud round of applause for this beautiful session. थोड़ा म्यूजिक ही बजा दो भाई.
know.